Hello, I'm Maria Ressa. Welcome to Talk Thursday. The Metro Rail Transit, or the MRT, comes under public scrutiny after one of its cars derailed and slammed into the safety barriers of the southernmost station on August 13th. Since this incident, the MRT line has been plagued by more service interruptions. On September 3, another MRT train malfunctioned, operating with the train doors wide open. People saying it was a safety factor. Nearly 600,000 people ride the MRT daily, far beyond its capacity of 360,000 passengers. Upgrades to the train line systems are a long time coming, given the MRT3's current state. Joining us today is MRT spokesman Hernando Cabrera to shed light on how the MRT management will deal with this one problem after another. Hernan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, you're on the hot seat. So, how did you react? What's being done?
Well, reaction, of course, a lot of things, but the important thing is the things that we have to do.
Yep.
Three things. Number one is the vigilance. I always say this. Vigilance in the matters of our maintenance activities. Secondly is the need to rehabilitate and upgrade our systems. And then number three, the capacity enhancement of MRT3. As you have mentioned earlier, the system is designed for 350,000 daily passengers, but as of today, we are now serving around 600,000 people. So as I mentioned, number three priority is the capacity expansion. And for this one, we have already procured additional rolling stocks or trains for MRT3. The first delivery of the coaches will be completed sometime in September 2015, and then 2015, and then all the coaches that we have procured will be delivered completely by 2016 September also.
So you're looking at September 2015. What happens between now and then?
Well, as I have mentioned earlier, that aspect will have to be dealt with our vigilance when it comes to our maintenance activities. We have now arranged some measures to prevent all those glitches and those problems that we have been encountering. But you can see lately we have reduced the number of glitches that we are encountering with respect to MRT3 system.
So these problems, though, could have been anticipated, right? I mean, we knew the excess capacity was happening. Why wasn't it addressed before the accidents happen?
Yes, this capacity issue and rehabilitation upgrading issue is quite complicated.
Go ahead.
We cannot just simply come in at the time or earlier because of the complication brought about by the contract that we have with the private owners. We have to remember that this project, MRT3, is a result of a build, operate, transfer scheme.
Okay.
And in that scheme, in that particular contract, we have given some rights or the obligation to the private owners to do all this upgrading and rehabilitation and the capacity expansion thing, which has not been done for the last several years.
Why wasn't it done? And how can the government hold them accountable? Who are we talking about?
Well, it's the same thing that we are raising, and the OTC Legal is now looking into these things on how can we hold them accountable with respect to this upgrading capacity expansion that should have been done earlier.
What's the difference between MRT3 and other public transportation, for
Yes,
example?
if we compare Line 1 and Line 2 of LRT and MRT3 when it comes to upgrading and rehabilitation, it's really, there's a big difference between the two. For several years, we have implemented a lot of rehabilitation and upgrading projects for Line 1, specifically for Line 1. MRT3 is a 15-year-old system. But compared to Line 1, it's a 30-year-old system. But we have, as I have said, done a lot of rehabilitation and upgrading projects for Line 1.
Why could, again, I guess part of it is because it is a BOT project, but if you were doing that for Line 1, why were there no red flags raised for MRT3?
Well, for Line 1, it's a government-owned system. It is government who is funding everything. It is government who is operating the system. We are the one maintaining the system. But in the case of MRT3, it is privately owned. At the time, before the OTC came in, the maintenance activities are being done by the private owners to a particular contractor. So everything is being done by the private company except for the operation. So there's a complication brought about by the contract that we have with these particular private owners.
So what can you do to fast track this now and to assure the commuters who get on this every day?
Yes, on the issue of how we can do these things, the government is now doing everything. So yes,
okay.
the OTC decided to come in, and it is the OTC now who will do, number one is the maintenance, the rehabilitation projects, also the capacity enhancement project. This is the reason why the additional trains were procured not by the private company but by the OTC itself. And then we have listed several upgrading projects that will be undertaken, and all these things will have to be done by the OTC.
Interesting. So the government is filling the gap.
Yes.
Again, the question though is, could it not have anticipated that things like this would happen if the private partner wasn't doing its job?
I think that matter is covered by some sort of a legal case or an arbitration case being pursued by both parties.
Okay.
But then again, there's another option being studied by the OTC if there's a case or a cause of action on the part of the government to sue or to go after the private owners. But this thing is a thing being done by the OTC legal. I'm still waiting
Got it.
for any
Who are
word
the
from
private owners that did the BOT here?
Yes, the private owner is MRTC.
Okay.
MRTC.
MRTC.
Yes, and again, MRTC is owned by another private company.
The perception is that the government hasn't done enough for commuters, that Metro Manila is a city of 12 million people, and that if you don't own a car, it's just very difficult to get around. Is the government doing enough for people without cars, for the majority of Filipinos who are in this metropolis?
Generally, yes. We have this line 1, we have line 2, and for line 1 and line 2, we have started extension projects. I am very much involved with the extension project for line 2. Any moment now, within this month, we will be publishing the invitation to bid for the construction of the additional 2 stations, a 4.2-kilometer extension of line 2. And then line 1, we are now just waiting for the issuance of the notice of award to the winning concessionaire.
When you're doing planning like this, other countries say, like Singapore would do a 10-year plan and they would factor in the potential growth of populations. How does the Philippine government do this? What's the insider's look on how you plan ahead?
Well, when it comes to railway projects, we have planned ahead.
Okay.
We have several railway projects that will serve the passengers. We have the example I gave, the extension of line 2
Correct.
going to Masinag.
Okay.
The extension of line 1 going to Bacoor, Cavite.
So both line 1 and line 2, what is the capacity that it will be able to carry given what you're planning ahead?
For line 1 right now, we are serving about 500,000 daily.
Okay.
And there will be an additional about, I think, 200,000 if we extend this up to Bacoor. And then for line 2, by extending it up to Masinag, we will have an additional capacity of about 100,000 passengers. And then there are other lines. We have MRT3 7.
Right.
This is the one coming from North Avenue going to Bulacan, San Jose del Monte. And then we have other lines being on our planning, on our plans, on our map. We have mapped out all the possible alignment that we could use by constructing these kinds of mass transit rail system.
So given that, again, in terms of capacity, when you look at the entire train system that's projecting forward, how many Filipinos, how many people will it be able to serve total?
Well, if you take the numbers that we have now for line 1, line 2, and MRT3, we're currently serving at around 1.3 million. So every time, if we double this up, we could be serving around 300 million passengers daily.
Are these plans in coordination with public transportation for the bus system and for any other type of public transportation? Is there a coherent look at how commuters, how their lives will be affected, a way of planning ahead? And then the corollary to that is, how far ahead do you plan?
Yes. with these new extensions and with these new projects, one component always emerge, and this is the fact that we have already incorporated in all our designs some sort of a central station or a facility in which the buses, the jeeps, the taxi can come in one area with we call that intermodal stations. So we
What's an
create
example of that exists right now? Because like in New York, it would be Port Authority, right? Where buses, trains.
right now we don't have one yet.
We don't have
But-
one
But we have undertaken, we're now pursuing a lot of projects similar to that.
Okay.
But for the planned stations of Line 1 extension and Line 2 extensions, we are now planning to have an intermodal stations in which the buses can come in, the jeepneys and all other mode of transport can use that particular station to interconnect the different modes of transport to serve the passengers.
When do you think this will be
conveniently.
online? When will this be a reality?
For Line 2 extension, if we are able to award that contract within this year, construction will start early next year. It will be completed in 1.5 years.
So by the end of this administration.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. President Aquino actually said that the problems this administration is dealing with are because of the lack of inaction on former President Arroyo's part. I know that the government has been talking about this for a long time. They were aware of the capacity issues in the past administration. This administration, how would you compare it? You've been involved with government for a long time now. I mean, is it proactive enough to deal with these? Let me stop there, and then I'll ask it to you. Is it proactive? Is it different? Is it more aggressive? How does it compare to past administrations?
It's basically the same. It's
Still,
proactive. Yes.
so you're saying both are proactive, or you're saying both are bureaucratic and not proactive?
Proactive both.
Both on your end, from what you see.
Yes, the way I see it.
But yet, the problems are worse, right? When I compare it again to, let's say, Tokyo, New York, Singapore, the capacity for our mass transport system. It's good now. I mean, it's great that we're focused on it. But when it rains and I look outside, people are standing in the rain, the long lines at the MRT. In the short term, you said it's vigilance that's needed, but part of it is also holding which groups are accountable for the problems we have now. Who would you say are accountable?
It's basically funding.
Please explain.
Funding, yes. We have this problem on our part. Two things. The procurement law that we have.
Yes.
It's very, very difficult to procure anything. You have to pass through a lot of process just to buy 10 pieces of air conditioning units. You have to go through a lot of process to buy
The bureaucracy.
yes, the needed spare parts for the
Yes.
trains, and also the funding, of course.
Couldn't something like what DPWH did, because again, when this administration came in, the process for DPWH was really, hinilangkat nila, right? They really looked at it. Couldn't something like that have been done to fast track these things?
Well, the train train industry is different from a simple thing of doing or constructing
Yeah.
a piece of bridge or a
Right, which
yes.
is a project.
Yes, but when it comes to the railway industry, it's quite difficult when it comes to spare parts, the systems that you need to procure, the systems that you need to implement or to pursue. It's really complicated when it comes to the system itself that is involved in consideration of the procurement process that we have.
How can you make that better? Because ultimately that seems to be something we hear a lot from different government agencies also, that it's the bureaucracy inside. And overall, from the inside, what could be done to make this move faster?
Well, on the part of LRTA, we have been looking at the possibility of having a specialized kind of procurement process that we can ask the GPPB. This is the Government Procurement Policy Board. We can come up with that and then have it approved by the GPPB, so that we could at least come up with something that is needed or the idiosyncrasies that we have when it comes to procuring our parts. We can make things easier for us to procure and to process the needed parts that our systems require.
Is that something that's just inside DOTC, or do you see something that can be better, that can be whole of government?
Yes, the whole of government. Probably, what I can say is that probably with respect to some other specialized agencies, they can come up with a specialized kind of a procurement process. Of course, it will be still in the light of the existing procurement law,
Right.
but we can adapt something that is something special to serve the special needs of these agencies like LRTA.
So after all of these accidents had started to happen, most Filipinos tend to blame the leader, right? So is that correct? Or is this an organizational issue that was there long before the leader? So for example, the Secretary DOTC, Junabaya, had to go and really he put himself on the line. Did he do enough? He says yes, he did. Is this the way we should be thinking? Or is this an organizational issue throughout government?
Well, when it comes to the people, I guess it's something cultural. Everything there's something wrong, we blame whoever is sitting, who's leading us.
Yes. But what's the right thing to do? I guess if you're talking to commuters who have to deal with this day in, day out. What would you tell them?
Well, I don't want to blame them. That's number one.
Yeah.
It's not their fault.
Okay.
And probably what I can say is that I will always ask for their patience and their cooperation when it comes to our policies, our regulation when it comes to safety and security. It all boils down to, on one hand, their cooperation, their understanding, but at the same time, the sincere effort on our part, especially us in the LRTA and MRT3 management to do our part to provide the convenience, the safety, and the reliable service that we owe our public, our riding public.
So you're talking about systematic issues, procurement, bureaucratic issues, and yet in the last one, the August 13th accident, the people who were really punished were the ones on the ground, where the rubber hits the pavement, really, the operators who were there. Is it their fault, or is it a systematic issue? Was that scapegoating?
No, it's not something of a scapegoat. Actually, we have to look at it on a two perspective. If we look at it on a general scale, then probably there's a problem. I refer back to the issue on procurement, the issue on government contracts, the issue on the way we should be doing things. But if you look at it on the aspect of, have they done the proper procedure?
Yeah.
That's another thing, of course.
Yeah.
So that's another issue. We have to fault them, really, because it's very clear.
Understood.
Yes. It's something that they should have done based on the procedure that we have laid down.
I suppose part of it is that the people who were operating it are held accountable, but the process that created the bureaucratic problems, that created the problems they have to deal with,
That's another thing.
they're not being held accountable
Yes,
yet,
yes,
right? That's I think. So let me just throw one or two questions from social media. This is from at Twitter at GRVTYKMO. Do MRT and LRT managers have a plan to make them interconnect with PNR? Interesting question.
Yes. A few years back, I saw a plan. I think I got involved in this planning session. Interconnection, in a sense that two or three possible stations can converge.
Yep.
And we look at the Bloomington station of Line 1.
Yep.
Because Line 1 intersects with PNR line in the Bloomington area. So what we're trying to do that time is to explore the possibility of creating one big station in the area in which passengers from LRT Line 1 can easily transfer to the station of PNR in that area.
Right.
Yes. I think the plan is still there. It's just a matter of pursuing this in the future.
Fantastic. Another question from Twitter from @MansDB Garcia. What do you plan to do about the long lines at the MRT?
Two things. The short term, as of last week, officer in charge San Jose came up with a plan to bring all the passenger upstairs,
Okay.
so that they will not be exposed to the elements
The
while
sun,
waiting.
Right, sun, rain.
Yes. But on the long term, the only solution really is to bring in additional trains.
Capacity,
And this
which-
will happen definitely beginning 2015, September.
September
Yes.
2015. That's when the first coaches come in. So
Yes.
you talked about the plans now and how DOTC is really stepping in to fill this gap while it's going to work on a legal case to look at its legal options against the BOT. Do you have enough time? You barely have a year and a half. Do you have enough time to make a difference in this problem?
Yes, we have enough time to make a contribution to alleviate the problems that we have now, especially on the sufferings being experienced by the passengers every day, in the morning and in the afternoon. We have the peak hour in the morning between 7 up to 9,
Yes.
and then in the evening between 5 to 7 in the evening. So we can, with this time, one and a half year, we can still do a lot of things to alleviate the problem.
Fantastic. And then the last question is, how far ahead will you be planning? 5 years ahead? Will you be, I guess again, if in a normal, we're at the Asian Institute of Management, so in terms of management, like if I was planning for this, it would be, I would go 5 years ahead, the capacity would be this much. How far ahead will you plan for this? Or is it really right now a stopgap measure to get us to what is necessary?
Well, to answer that, really have to confer with the planning department of the OTC.
Okay.
I'm not really aware of the specific things that should be done or the planning for the next 5 years or the next 10 years.
Okay, fantastic. Your last thoughts. Thank you very much, first of all, for really, sitting and telling us what it looks like from where you are. Your last thoughts. What do people need to know now?
Probably, again, I will have to repeat, I am again asking for their patience, forgiveness for all these things that they are now made to endure. And again, I want to assure everybody that we at MRT3, LRT-A, the OTC, are doing everything to fast track everything, to deliver all those necessary convenience that we can do for this remaining 1.5 years. But then again, I really have to say our apologies, and again, our apologies repeatedly done will not alleviate actually.
Yes. Well, also
But-
it's a bit unfair to you because this was not your fault. You're now absorbing the blame for something that could have been dealt with much earlier.
It's part of the job. It's part of the work description.
Will there be a backward look to see where accountability really belongs?
Again, it's something that the OTC Legal has to look into.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your candor. We have been speaking to MRT spokesman Hernando Cabrera. Thank you for joining us here. The steps the MRT management's been taking to solve the series of accidents of our main metro railway system, and himself, what he sees ahead. There is an end in sight. New coaches coming in September 2015. Until then, help the system, help yourself. Let's, in the words of Hernan, be vigilant. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for watching and joining us on Talk Thursday.